The champagne flutes clinked like delicate bells throughout the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across Manhattan's elite as they mingled in their designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. This was the annual Sinclair Foundation Charity Gala, where the city's wealthiest gathered to write checks and feel good about themselves. And standing in the center of it all, smiling for the cameras in a silver Valentino gown that cost more than her childhood home, was me, Sophia Chen Sinclair, wife of billionaire tech mogul Alexander Sinclair, living what everyone called a fairy tale life. But fairy tales, I was about to discover, are just stories we tell ourselves to make the darkness easier to bear. I had stepped away from the main ballroom to take a phone call from the caterer about tomorrow's arrangements. Our third wedding anniversary party was scheduled for the next evening, a lavish celebration for 500 guests that would be live-streamed to Alexander's 2 million social media followers. Everything had to be perfect. Alexander insisted on perfection. As I ended the call near the private terrace, I heard voices drifting through the partially open French doors. Alexander's distinctive laugh, the one he used when he was trying to impress someone. I was about to announce my presence when I heard something that made my blood turn to ice. "Come on, Alexander, we've all been wondering. How did you end up with her?" The voice belonged to Richard Worthington, one of Alexander's oldest friends from Yale. "She's so different from your usual type." I should have walked away. I should have pushed through those doors and interrupted the conversation. But something kept me frozen in place, my hand hovering over the door handle. Alexander's response came with that same charming laugh. "Honestly, Rich, nobody else wanted her. I married Sophia out of pity. She was so desperate, so grateful for any attention. It was almost sad, really." The world tilted on its axis. The phone in my hand suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. But years of corporate presentations and client meetings had trained me well. Instead of gasping or crying or bursting through those doors, I did something else entirely. My fingers, moving on pure instinct, opened my phone's voice recorder and pressed record. "But the prenup?" Another voice chimed in. "Gregory Ashford, Victoria's father. You protected yourself, right?" "Of course." Alexander's voice dripped with smugness. "She signed everything I put in front of her. Didn't even read it properly." The woman was drowning in student debt, working 60-hour weeks as a freelance designer, living in a studio apartment in Queens that had rats. When I offered her this life, she practically fell at my feet in gratitude. "And she has no idea?" Richard asked. "That the marriage was primarily a strategic business decision?" "Not a clue. The board needed me to clean up my playboy image before the IPO. A wholesome marriage to a middle-class girl with a sweet backstory? Perfect PR. My approval ratings with the conservative investor demographic went up 43% after the wedding. They all laughed. The sound of their laughter would haunt me for weeks. I stood there for another 5 minutes, recording everything. They talked about me like I was a project, a problem they'd solved, a box they'd checked. Alexander mentioned how I was manageable and didn't ask too many questions. Richard made a joke about the betting pool they had running on how long the marriage would last. Gregory mentioned that Alexander should trade up once the company went public. And then Alexander said the words that transformed my heartbreak into something else entirely. Something cold and calculating and dangerous. The best part? She actually loves me. It's almost too easy. When I finally walked back into the ballroom 20 minutes later, I was a different person. The naive girl who had believed in fairy tales was gone. In her place was someone who understood exactly what she was dealing with. Predator. A manipulator. A man who had built his entire relationship with me on a foundation of lies and pity. But if Alexander thought I was going to crumble, he had severely underestimated the woman he married. I found him holding court near the bar, surrounded by admirers. When he saw me, his face lit up with that $1,000,000 smile that had once made my heart skip. Now it just made me sick. "There's my beautiful wife," he said, pulling me close and kissing my cheek for the cameras. His hand on my waist felt like a brand. "Where did you disappear to?" "Just handling some details for tomorrow," I replied, my voice steady. Everything has to be perfect for our anniversary. That's my Sophia. Always so organized. He squeezed my waist. What would I do without you? The question hung in the air between us, loaded with meanings he didn't even realize. What would he do without me? He was about to find out. I played the role perfectly for the rest of the evening. The devoted wife. The grateful girl from Queens who couldn't believe her luck. I smiled for photos, made small talk with people who had probably heard Alexander's real opinion of me, and counted down the minutes until I could escape. The car ride home to our penthouse on Fifth Avenue was silent. Alexander scrolled through his phone, probably reading the social media coverage of the gala. Our penthouse occupied the entire top floor of the building, 8,000 square feet of marble and glass and art that cost more than most people would earn in a lifetime. I'm exhausted, I said as we entered. I think I'll take a bath and go to bed early. Good idea. Alexander barely looked up from his phone. I have some work to catch up on anyway. Investor calls with Singapore in an hour. I went to our bedroom suite, but I didn't take a bath. Instead, I waited exactly 15 minutes, until I heard Alexander's office door close and his voice rise in conversation with whoever was on the other end of his call. Then I moved. Our home office was Alexander's private sanctuary, a room I was rarely invited into. He claimed it was because he handled sensitive business information there, and I had been stupid enough to believe him. But Alexander had one fatal flaw in his otherwise careful manipulation. He was arrogant. So arrogant that he never imagined I would dare to invade his space. The office was locked, but I knew where he kept the spare key. Third drawer of the hallway console table, hidden under a stack of business cards. My hands shook as I unlocked the door and slipped inside, leaving the lights off and using my phone's flashlight instead. His filing cabinets were meticulous, everything labeled and organized. I started with the one marked personal and found it almost immediately. A manila folder, thicker than the others, with a label that made my blood run cold. Project Sophia. I pulled it out and sat on the floor, my back against the wall, and began to read. With each page, the betrayal grew deeper, more calculated, more devastating. The folder contained everything. Psychological profiles of me that someone had clearly been paid to compile. My credit score. My student loan statements. My social media history going back years. There were printed emails between Alexander and his PR team discussing target demographics and relatability factors. There was a timeline of our relationship with little checkmarks next to milestones. First date. First kiss. First, I love you. Proposal. Wedding. Each one marked like items on a to-do list. But the worst part was the section labeled insurance. It contained copies of documents I had signed over the past 3 years. The prenup, obviously, which I now realized was designed to leave me with almost nothing if we divorced. But there were other things too. Papers I had signed without reading carefully because I trusted my husband. Partnership agreements in shell companies I didn't even know existed. All with my signature, making me legally complicit in business dealings I knew nothing about. If Alexander was ever investigated, I would go down with him. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the folder when I found the next section. Photos. Hundreds of them. Alexander and a woman I recognized immediately. Victoria Ashford. Beautiful, blonde, born into old money Victoria. They were together at restaurants, hotels, his supposed business trips. The dates on the photos spanned our entire marriage. He had been cheating on me from the very beginning. I heard footsteps in the hallway and froze. Alexander's voice carried from somewhere in the apartment. Sophia? Are you still awake? I shoved the folder back into the filing cabinet as quietly as I could, my heart pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. In the bathroom, I called out, trying to keep my voice normal. Be out in a minute. I locked the office door behind me, returned the key to its hiding place, and made it to the bathroom just as Alexander appeared in the hallway. I thought you were taking a bath, he said, his eyes narrowing slightly. Changed my mind. Just washing my face. I turned on the faucet to cover my shaking hands. Your call ended early? Singapore had to reschedule. He watched me in the mirror, and for a moment, I saw something flicker across his face. Suspicion? But then it was gone, replaced by that charming smile. Come to bed. I want to hold my beautiful wife. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something at him. I wanted to tell him I knew everything and watch his perfect facade crumble. But I didn't, because I had learned something crucial from that folder in his office. Alexander Sinclair wasn't just a cheater or a manipulator. He was a predator who planned everything carefully. And if I was going to beat him, I needed to be just as calculated, just as strategic. More so, actually, because I was starting from a position of weakness. I needed help. Real help. And I knew exactly where to get it. That night, I lay next to my husband in our California king bed, listening to him sleep, and made a plan. Alexander had spent 3 years treating me like a project, a problem to solve, a prop in his perfect life. He thought I was weak, grateful, manageable. He was about to discover just how wrong he was. The next morning, after Alexander left for his office in Midtown, I made a phone call I should have made 2 years ago. A call to the one person who had tried to warn me about Alexander from the very beginning. My brother, Marcus. Marcus Chen was 5 years older than me and the only family I had left after our parents passed away. He was a forensic accountant and corporate investigator, brilliant and thorough and protective of his little sister to a fault. When I started dating Alexander, Marcus had been skeptical. He'd done some digging and found things that concerned him. Rumors about Alexander's business practices. Whispers about his treatment of women. Nothing concrete, but enough to make Marcus worried. But I was in love, or what I thought was love, and I didn't want to hear it. When Marcus pushed harder, trying to get me to slow down, to wait, to investigate Alexander more thoroughly before marrying him, I accused him of being jealous of my happiness. We had a massive fight 3 days before my wedding. Marcus didn't attend. We hadn't spoken since. Now, standing in the penthouse that felt more like a prison than a home, I dialed his number with shaking fingers. He answered on the second ring. Sophia. Just hearing his voice made tears spring to my eyes. Marcus, I need your help. You were right about Alexander. You were right about everything. There was a long pause. Then, tell me everything. Don't leave anything out. I told him about the conversation I'd overheard at the gala, about the folder in Alexander's office, about the photos of Victoria, about the documents with my signature that I didn't understand. I told him everything, my words tumbling over each other in my rush to get it all out. When I finished, Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that changed everything. Sophia, I never stopped investigating him. Even after we fought, even after you stopped talking to me, I kept digging. I knew something was wrong. I just couldn't prove it without access to his private files. My breath caught. What did you find? Everything. Alexander's company is built on a foundation of fraud. Fake investor reports, embezzled funds, shell corporations in the Cayman Islands. He's been cooking the books for years. The IPO he's planning? It's going to defraud investors of hundreds of millions of dollars. Oh my God! There's more. Remember those documents you signed? The partnership agreements? Alexander has been using your name and your signature to create shell companies. If the SEC ever investigates him, and they will eventually, you'll be implicated too. You could go to prison, Sophia. The room spun around me. I sank into one of the designer chairs that probably cost more than my college education. He set me up. This whole marriage, he set me up to take the fall if he ever got caught. That's exactly what he did. But here's the thing, little sister. In setting you up, he made a critical mistake. Your name is on those companies, which means you have legal claim to the assets held within them. Real assets. Money, property, investments. Conservatively, about $400 million. $400 million. The number was so large it didn't feel real. Marcus, what do I do? First, you don't let him know you know anything. Can you do that? Can you keep playing the role of the grateful wife? I thought about the years I'd spent believing Alexander's lies. The years I'd made myself smaller, quieter, more manageable to fit into his perfect life. If I could do that out of love, I could certainly do it out of strategy. I can do it. Good. Second, I need you to get me access to his files. Everything in that office. Can you photograph the documents? He keeps his office locked. But you found a way in last night. Yes. Then you can do it again. I need photos of everything in that Project Sophia folder, all the shell company documents, his financial records, everything. Can you do that? When? Today. While he's at work. We don't have much time, Sophia. Tomorrow is your anniversary party. 500 guests, live streamed to millions. If we're going to take him down, that's our moment. Tomorrow? Marcus, that's insane. We can't possibly. Sophia. His voice was gentle but firm. Alexander has spent 3 years destroying you piece by piece, making you doubt yourself, isolating you from your family, setting you up to take the fall for his crimes. Tomorrow night, he's planning to parade you in front of the world as his perfect, devoted wife. We can let that happen, or we can use his own stage to expose exactly who he really is. But it has to be tomorrow. Once that party is over, he'll be harder to catch. Are you with me? I looked around the penthouse, at the life I'd thought was mine but was really just another one of Alexander's carefully constructed lies. I thought about the woman I used to be, the scrappy designer from Queens who put herself through college, who built a freelance business from nothing, who never gave up even when things were impossibly hard. That woman wouldn't have needed someone else to save her. That woman would have saved herself. I'm with you, I said. Tell me what to do. Marcus arrived at the penthouse 2 hours later. I hadn't seen him in 2 years, but he looked exactly the same. Same serious expression, same protective big brother energy, same way of analyzing everything with those sharp, calculating eyes that missed nothing. He pulled me into a fierce hug. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. You tried to warn me. I didn't listen. You were in love, or you thought you were. Alexander is good at making people see what he wants them to see. Marcus pulled back and looked at me seriously. But Sophia, what we're about to do, there's no going back from it. Are you absolutely sure? I handed him my phone with the recording from last night's gala still on it. He listened, his expression growing darker with each word. When it finished, he looked at me with something like respect. You recorded this? I knew I'd need evidence. Smart. This is good, but we need more. Much more. Alexander has expensive lawyers and powerful friends. We need to bury him so thoroughly that no amount of money or influence can dig him out. We spent the next 3 hours in Alexander's office, photographing everything. Marcus worked methodically, making sure we documented every page, every signature, every incriminating detail. The Project Sophia folder, the shell company documents, the financial records showing years of fraud and embezzlement, the photos of Alexander and Victoria. But Marcus found something else, something I had missed. Hidden in the back of Alexander's filing cabinet in a folder labeled Insurance were files on several other people. Alexander's business partner who he'd forced out of the company, his executive assistant, even his own parents. Each file contained leverage, secrets, weaknesses, things Alexander could use to control or destroy them if needed. He keeps files on everyone, Marcus said quietly. This is how he operates. He finds people's vulnerabilities and exploits them. You're not his first victim, Sophia. You're just his most recent. As we photographed the last of the documents, Marcus made several phone calls. I'm assembling a team, he explained. People who have their own reasons to want Alexander exposed. We're going to need all the help we can get. The first person to arrive was James Rodriguez. He was in his late 40s, distinguished-looking, with kind eyes and a firm handshake. Ms. Chen Sinclair, he said, using my maiden name deliberately. Your brother told me you're finally ready to take down Alexander Sinclair. I've been waiting years for this opportunity. You knew Alexander? We were business partners once. 6 years ago, we co-founded the company that made him a billionaire. Then he manufactured evidence that I was embezzling funds, forced me out, and took everything. I lost $50 million and my reputation. I've spent the last 6 years rebuilding my life and waiting for the right moment to get justice. Marcus handed James some of the documents we'd photographed. These show the real embezzlement. Alexander's been stealing from the company since day one. Your name was on those early accounts. With this evidence, you can prove you were framed. James studied the documents, his hands shaking slightly. After all these years, finally, the next arrival surprised me. Elena Volkov, Alexander's executive assistant, stood in our doorway looking nervous but determined. She was elegant, professional, probably in her early 30s. I'd met her dozens of times at company events but never really talked to her. Mrs. Sinclair, I hope you don't mind me coming. Marcus said you were building a case against your husband. Please call me Sophia. And no, I don't mind. But I have to ask, why would you want to help? You work for Alexander. Elena's professional mask cracked slightly. I work for him, yes, but that doesn't mean I respect him. Do you know why I've stayed in this job for 4 years despite hating every minute of it? I shook my head. Because I've been waiting, gathering evidence, building a case. 3 years ago, Alexander sexually harassed me. When I threatened to report him, he showed me a file, not unlike the ones your brother just found. He had dirt on my family, things that could destroy them. So I stayed quiet. But I've been documenting everything since then. Every inappropriate comment, every shady business deal, every lie he's told. I have access to his emails, his calendar, his phone records. Everything. She pulled out a flash drive. This contains 4 years of evidence. And I am more than ready to use it. The last person to join our team was Diana Price, an investigative journalist from the New York Times. She was sharp-eyed and intense, the kind of reporter who had built a career on exposing corruption. I've been investigating Alexander Sinclair for 2 years, she said. I know he's dirty. I just haven't been able to prove it. Whatever you need, cameras, reporters, media coverage, I can make it happen. Marcus spread out all our evidence on the dining room table. Documents, photos, recordings, witness testimony. Okay, he said. Here's what we know. Alexander Sinclair has committed multiple counts of securities fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, and tax evasion. He sexually harassed employees and used blackmail to keep them quiet. He married Sophia as a PR stunt and has been setting her up to take the fall if his crimes are ever discovered. And tomorrow night, he's planning to parade her in front of 500 guests and a live-stream audience of millions as his perfect, devoted wife. So we expose him at the party, James said. Not just expose him, Marcus corrected. We destroy him, completely and thoroughly, in a way that he can never recover from. Over the next several hours, we built our plan. Operation Checkmate, Marcus called it. Every move calculated, every contingency planned for, every possible escape route blocked. Elena would continue playing her role as the perfect assistant, but she would feed Alexander false information about a major investor who would be attending tomorrow's party. Someone interested in putting $500 million into the company before the IPO. James would play that investor. He'd meet with Alexander privately during the party, get him to confess his illegal activities on hidden camera, thinking he was impressing a potential business partner. Marcus would coordinate with the SEC and FBI. They'd been investigating Alexander for months based on Marcus's tips, but they needed concrete evidence to get warrants. We'd give them everything they needed. Diana would have her camera crew at the party, supposedly documenting the perfect marriage for a puff piece. Really, they'd be capturing everything for the exposé of the decade. And I would play my role, the devoted wife, right up until the moment I took the microphone during Alexander's anniversary toast and revealed the truth to everyone. There's one problem, I said as we reviewed the plan. The prenup. Even if we expose Alexander, even if he goes to prison, the prenuptial agreement gives me almost nothing in a divorce. I'd walk away with maybe $2 million while he keeps billions. Marcus smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. About that prenup, I had a lawyer friend review it based on the information you gave me. Prenuptial agreements are void if the marriage was entered into under fraudulent pretenses. Alexander married you as part of a business strategy, deliberately deceiving you about his intentions. That's textbook fraud. The prenup won't hold up in court. But even so, I'm not entitled to half his assets. We've only been married 3 years. True. But remember those shell companies with your name on them? The ones Alexander created to hide his illegal activities? You're listed as a 30% owner of companies holding over $400 million in assets. Assets that you had no idea existed. A good lawyer could argue that you're entitled to compensation for being unknowingly involved in Alexander's criminal enterprise. Elena leaned forward. There's more. Alexander has been siphoning money from the company into personal accounts for years. Those aren't marital assets, they're stolen assets. If the court seizes them, they could argue that you, as the unknowing accomplice whose identity was stolen, deserve restitution. James nodded. And if I file my lawsuit for the $50 million he stole from me and win, that comes out of his personal wealth. We could bleed him dry. I looked at all these people who barely knew me, who were risking their own reputations and safety to help me bring down a man who had hurt all of us. Why are you all doing this? You could just report him anonymously. Stay out of it entirely. Diana spoke first. Because men like Alexander Sinclair count on people being too afraid to fight back. They count on their victims staying silent, staying isolated, thinking they're alone. I became a journalist to give voice to people who have been silenced. This is what I do. I'm doing this because for 4 years I felt powerless, Elena said quietly. He made me feel small and afraid. Tomorrow night, I'm taking my power back. He destroyed my life once already, James added. I'm not afraid of him anymore. Marcus put his hand on my shoulder. And I'm doing this because you're my sister, and nobody hurts my sister and gets away with it. I felt tears sting my eyes, but I blinked them back. Okay, let's destroy Alexander Sinclair. We worked through the night, refining every detail of the plan. Marcus coordinated with his contacts at the SEC and FBI, making sure they'd be ready to move the moment we gave them the signal. Diana prepared her camera crew and planned exactly how to position them for maximum coverage. Elena drafted the fake investor profile that would lure Alexander into incriminating himself. James practiced his role, perfecting the persona of a wealthy foreign investor impressed by Alexander's business acumen. And I prepared myself for the most difficult performance of my life, being the perfect wife to a man I now hated with every fiber of my being. As the sun rose over Manhattan, Marcus pulled me aside. Sophia, once we do this, your life will never be the same. The media attention will be intense. People will dig into your past, question your motives, wonder if you knew about Alexander's crimes all along. Are you ready for that? I thought about the woman in that recording from the gala, the desperate girl that nobody wanted, the pity wife, the prop in Alexander's perfect life. That woman never existed, I said firmly. She was a character Alexander created. Tomorrow night, the world is going to meet the real Sophia Chen, and I'm ready for them to see her. Alexander came home at 6 p.m., exhausted from a long day of meetings. I had spent the entire day preparing, not just for the party but for the role I needed to play. The evidence was safely copied and stored in multiple locations. Marcus had confirmed that the FBI and SEC were standing by. Diana's camera crew was scheduled to arrive tomorrow afternoon. Elena had planted the information about the fake investor, and Alexander had taken the bait enthusiastically. Everything was in motion. I just had to make it through the next 24 hours without Alexander suspecting anything. How was your day? I asked, greeting him at the door with a kiss that made my skin crawl. Exhausting. The IPO paperwork is endless. He loosened his tie and headed for the bar. How are the party preparations? Everything's perfect. The caterers confirmed. The florists are setting up tomorrow morning, and the live stream team will be here at 5 to do technical checks. Good. This party needs to be flawless. We'll have investors there, board members, media. It's not just our anniversary. It's a showcase for the company. Of course it was, because nothing in our marriage had ever actually been about us. It was always about Alexander's image, Alexander's company, Alexander's success. I picked up my dress today, I said, watching his reaction carefully. It's beautiful. Red, fitted, very elegant. Alexander frowned. Red? I thought we agreed you'd wear white. symbolic of our pure love or whatever the PR team suggested. I know, but when I saw this dress, I just fell in love with it. The stunning Alexander. You'll love it. His frown deepened. Sophia, we discussed this. The optics matter. White dress, classic elegance, the perfect devoted wife. Red is too bold, too attention-seeking. There it was. The control. The expectation that I would mold myself into whatever image he needed. For 3 years, I would have immediately apologized and rushed out to find a white dress. But that woman was gone. I'm wearing the red dress, I said calmly. It's our anniversary party, and I'd like to feel beautiful. Something flickered across Alexander's face. Surprise, maybe, or suspicion. But then he smiled, that charming smile that had once made me weak. Of course, darling. Whatever makes you happy. Though I do think white would photograph better for the live stream. I'll take that risk. He studied me for a long moment, and I forced myself to meet his gaze without flinching. Finally, he shrugged. All right, red it is. Now I have some calls to make. Don't wait up for me. He disappeared into his office, and I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. That small act of defiance, insisting on my own choice, felt monumental. It was the first crack in the perfect wife facade. Later that night, as I lay in bed waiting for Alexander to finish his work, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. FBI confirmed. They'll have teams positioned around the venue tomorrow. The moment we give the signal, they'll move in. Are you ready for this? I typed back, more ready than I've ever been for anything. Another text came through, this one from Elena. Alexander just emailed me confirming the meeting with the investor tomorrow night. He's so excited. He has no idea what's coming. And then one from Diana. My team is in position. We're going to get everything on camera. This is going to be the story of the year. Finally, a message from James. I've played a lot of roles in my business career, but playing the man who takes down Alexander Sinclair is going to be my favorite performance. I fell asleep that night with my phone in my hand, surrounded by people who barely knew me but were willing to fight for me anyway. It was more support than I'd felt in 3 years of marriage. The morning of our anniversary party dawned bright and clear, the kind of perfect September day that makes Manhattan look like a movie set. I woke up early, before Alexander, and went for a run in Central Park. I needed to clear my head, to prepare myself mentally for what was coming. As I ran past the reservoir, I thought about the last 3 years. All the little moments where I'd made myself smaller, quieter, more convenient. The times I'd bitten my tongue when Alexander dismissed my opinions. The friends I'd lost touch with because Alexander didn't approve of them. The career dreams I'd set aside because being Mrs. Alexander Sinclair was supposed to be enough. I had let him reshape me into someone I didn't recognize. But that ended today. When I got back to the penthouse, Alexander was already on his second coffee and third phone call. He barely looked up as I came in, just gestured vaguely at a box on the counter. After his call ended, he finally acknowledged me. I had my stylist send over some jewelry options for tonight. The diamonds would pair well with your red dress. I opened the box. Inside was a diamond necklace that probably cost more than most people's houses. It was beautiful and cold and exactly the kind of thing Alexander would choose. Statement jewelry to make sure everyone knew how wealthy he was. It's lovely, I said, because that's what he expected. Wear it tonight. I want people to see how well I take care of you. The irony of that statement almost made me laugh. He took care of his image. I was just a prop in that carefully constructed facade. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of last-minute preparations. Florists transformed our penthouse into a garden of white roses and orchids. Caterers set up stations throughout the space. The live stream team arrived and began positioning cameras in every room. Our home, which already felt like a museum, became even more sterile and staged. I retreated to our bedroom to start getting ready. The red dress hung in my closet, a bold splash of color among all the neutral tones Alexander preferred. I'd bought it on impulse 2 days ago, knowing somehow that I needed to wear something that made me feel powerful, not pretty. Something that was my choice, not his. As I was doing my makeup, my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello, Mrs. Sinclair, this is Catherine Walsh. I'm a divorce attorney. Your brother Marcus retained me on your behalf. I wanted to introduce myself before tonight's events. My heart started racing. Tonight's events? Marcus briefed me on the situation. Based on the evidence he's provided, you have an extremely strong case for divorce with significant asset distribution in your favor. The prenuptial agreement won't hold up given the fraudulent nature of the marriage. I'll be attending the party tonight as a guest. When the time comes, I'll be ready to file papers immediately. How immediately? I can have Alexander served with divorce papers before he's even processed at the police station. I sat down on the bed, suddenly lightheaded. This was really happening. In a few hours, my entire life would implode. And I was choosing it, actively orchestrating it. Mrs. Sinclair? Are you still there? I'm here. And Ms. Walsh? Please call me Sophia. After tonight, I won't be Mrs. Sinclair anymore. Understood, Sophia. I'll see you tonight. And for what it's worth, what you're doing takes tremendous courage. Most people in your position would stay silent. After we hung up, I finished getting ready in a daze. Hair styled in loose waves, makeup dramatic but elegant. The red dress fit perfectly, hugging my curves and making me feel like a different person. A stronger person. I was fastening the diamond necklace when Alexander walked in. He stopped in the doorway, and for a moment, something like appreciation flickered across his face. You look beautiful, he said, and he almost sounded sincere. Thank you. He crossed the room and adjusted the necklace, his fingers cold against my skin. Tonight is important, Sophia. The investors will be watching. The board will be watching. I need you to be perfect. I'm always perfect for you, Alexander. He smiled, completely missing the edge in my voice. Yes, you are. That's why I married you. You're so easy to work with. Not a compliment, an assessment of my usefulness. The guests will start arriving in an hour, he continued. I'll need you by my side for photos, greeting everyone, playing the role. That's all I'd ever been to him. Of course, I said sweetly. I wouldn't dream of being anywhere else. As the first guests began to arrive, I positioned myself next to Alexander in our grand foyer, smiling and greeting people I barely knew. The penthouse filled quickly with Manhattan's elite. Tech moguls and society wives, investors and influencers, all dressed in their finest and ready to be seen at the Sinclair anniversary celebration. The live stream cameras were rolling, capturing every moment for Alexander's millions of followers. I could see the comments scrolling on the monitors. They're so perfect together. Relationship goals. She's so lucky. If only they knew. Victoria Ashford arrived fashionably late, wearing a white dress that made my choice of red even more pointed. She was stunning, confident, completely comfortable in this world in a way I had never been. When she saw me, her smile was pure poison. Sophia, darling, you look lovely. Red is so bold. Thank you, Victoria. White is very bridal. Special occasion. Her smile faltered slightly. She didn't know that I knew. Didn't know that I'd seen all the photos, read all the messages. She thought she was being clever, carrying on an affair right under my nose. Alexander appeared at my elbow, his hand possessive on my waist. Victoria, glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it for the world. I watched them exchange a loaded glance, the kind of look that spoke of shared secrets and intimacy. A few days ago, that look would have destroyed me. Now it just made me more determined. Marcus arrived with Elena, both of them playing the role of normal guests. Elena looked different out of her usual conservative work attire, elegant in a navy gown. Marcus caught my eye and gave me a subtle nod. Everything was in position. James Rodriguez was the last key player to arrive, playing his role of wealthy investor perfectly. Alexander practically fell over himself greeting the man, ushering him toward the study for a quick chat about business. That chat would be recorded on the hidden camera Elena had planted earlier. As Alexander disappeared with James, I circulated through the party, playing the perfect hostess. I made small talk about charity work and vacation homes. I posed for photos with people I'd never see again, I smiled until my face hurt. And I waited. An hour into the party, Marcus found me on the terrace. "The recording is gold," he whispered. "Alexander just confessed to everything. Securities fraud, embezzlement, money laundering. He's bragging about it to James, thinking he's impressing a potential investor. And the FBI? Standing by. They're positioned around the building. The moment you give the signal, they move." I took a deep breath of the cool evening air. Then it's time. At exactly 8 p.m., Alexander clinked his champagne glass to get everyone's attention. The conversations died down as 500 guests turned to look at him. The live stream cameras focused in. This was the moment he'd been planning for, the perfect showcase of his perfect life. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Alexander began, his voice carrying across the room with practiced ease. "3 years ago, I married the most wonderful woman I've ever known. Sophia has been my rock, my support, my everything. She's made me a better man." The crowd made appreciative noises. Someone called out, "Here, here." The live stream comments flooded with heart emojis. "I want to take this moment to tell her, and all of you, just how much she means to me." Alexander held out his hand to me. "Sophia, darling, come here." This was it, the moment of truth. I could feel Marcus's eyes on me from across the room. Elena had positioned herself near the main live stream camera. Diana's crew had their equipment ready. James had emerged from the study with the recording of Alexander's confession. I took Alexander's outstretched hand and let him pull me close. He wrapped his arm around my waist, holding me tight for the cameras. "I am the luckiest man in the world," he continued, "to have a wife who is not only beautiful but also so understanding, so supportive of my work, so willing to stand by my side through everything." The crowd applauded. Victoria was watching from the corner, her expression unreadable. "In fact," Alexander said, his smile growing wider, "I have a surprise announcement. Sophia and I are going to be parents. She's pregnant." The crowd erupted in applause and congratulations. The live stream comments exploded, and I felt my blood turn to ice. I wasn't pregnant. This was another one of his manipulations, another lie designed to cement his image as the perfect family man. He'd never even asked me, just decided to announce a fictional pregnancy to 500 people and millions of viewers. This was what finally broke something inside me. I pulled away from Alexander's embrace and took the microphone from his hand. His expression flickered with confusion, but he kept smiling for the cameras. "Thank you all for those congratulations," I said, my voice steady despite the rage burning through me. "But before we continue with this celebration, I have a few things I'd like to share." Alexander's smile faltered. "Sophia, what are you?" "First, I'm not pregnant. My husband just announced a complete fabrication to our guests and to millions of people watching online. But then again, fabrication is what Alexander does best." The room went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. The live stream comments started going crazy. "Sophia," Alexander hissed, reaching for the microphone, "what are you doing?" I stepped away from him, toward the center of the room where everyone could see me clearly. "I'm telling the truth for once. Something you've never done in our entire marriage." Marcus had moved to position himself between me and Alexander. Elena had pulled up the recordings on her laptop, ready to display them on the screens throughout the apartment. "3 nights ago, I overheard my husband at a charity gala. Would you like to know what he said about me? About our marriage?" "Sophia, stop this right now," Alexander commanded, his perfect facade cracking. He said, and I quote, "Nobody else wanted her. I married Sophia out of pity. She was so desperate, so grateful for any attention." Gasps echoed through the room. The live stream was chaos. Alexander's face had gone pale. "That's not. You're taking it out of context." "Oh, there's more context. Lots of it." I nodded to Elena, who hit a button on her laptop. Suddenly, all the screens in the penthouse, including the live stream feed, switched to show the recording I'd made at the gala. Alexander's voice filled the room, crystal clear and damning. "Nobody else wanted her. I married Sophia out of pity, The marriage was primarily a strategic business decision. The board needed me to clean up my playboy image. She actually loves me. It's almost too easy. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Guests started murmuring, some looking shocked, others checking their phones to confirm what they were seeing. Victoria had gone pale. Alexander was staring at the screens in horror. That's been edited. She's manipulated. I have the original recording, Alexander. Time-stamped and verified. But let's move on to the next part of this evening's revelations, shall we? The screens switched again, this time showing the photos from Alexander's office. Him with Victoria at various hotels and restaurants. Dates clearly visible, spanning our entire marriage. While we're on the subject of truth, I should mention that my husband has been having an affair with Victoria Ashford since before our wedding. 3 years of lies. 3 years of betrayal. Victoria stood up abruptly. Alexander, you said you were getting divorced. You said she knew. Victoria, not now. Not now. Victoria's voice was shrill. You told me she was a controlling nightmare who refused to let you go. You said you loved me. The crowd was eating this up. Phones were out everywhere, recording every moment. The live stream viewer count had skyrocketed to over 200,000 people. Let's talk about love, actually. I continued, my voice cutting through the chaos. Or rather, let's talk about fraud. The screens changed again, showing documents this time. The shell company papers with my forged signature. For 3 years, my husband has been using my name and identity to create shell corporations for the purpose of hiding embezzled funds and committing securities fraud. I knew nothing about these companies until 3 days ago. But my signature is on all the documents. Alexander lunged for me, but Marcus stepped in front of him. Don't, Marcus said quietly. Don't make this worse. This is insane. Alexander shouted. She's having some kind of breakdown. Someone call. The FBI? I finished for him. Already done. They're very interested in talking to you about these documents, Alexander. And the SEC would like a word about your planned IPO. The one that's designed to defraud investors of hundreds of millions of dollars. James stepped forward from the crowd. I can confirm that. Alexander Sinclair just spent the last hour confessing to multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering. All recorded, of course. Alexander's eyes widened as he recognized James. You, Rodriguez? What are you doing here? Getting justice for the $50 million you stole from me 6 years ago. Thanks for the confession, by the way. My lawyers will be filing suit first thing Monday morning. The room erupted in chaos. Guests were flooding toward the exits. The live stream was a frenzy of comments, the story already spreading across social media. Alexander stood in the center of it all, his perfect world crumbling around him. And then the FBI agents entered the apartment. Alexander Sinclair, you're under arrest for securities fraud, money laundering, embezzlement, and identity theft. The lead agent began reading him his rights while 2 others produced handcuffs. The cameras captured everything. Alexander being cuffed, his face a mask of shock and rage and disbelief. As they led him toward the door, he looked back at me. You're going to regret this, Sophia. I'll destroy you. The prenup? You'll get nothing. Catherine Walsh stepped forward, elegant and professional in her designer suit. Actually, Mr. Sinclair, the prenuptial agreement is void due to the fraudulent nature of the marriage. And given that you've been using Ms. Chen's identity to commit federal crimes, she's entitled to significant restitution. I'm Catherine Walsh, her divorce attorney. You'll be served with papers within the hour. Alexander's face went from pale to green. This isn't possible. This isn't. Have a nice evening, Mr. Sinclair, I said calmly. Or should I say, have a nice stay in federal custody. I hear the accommodations are somewhat different from what you're used to. As the FBI led Alexander out of our penthouse in handcuffs, cameras flashing from every direction, the live stream viewer count hit 500,000. The story was already viral, already trending on every platform. The perfect life exposed as a perfect lie. And I had never felt more free. The moment Alexander was escorted out in handcuffs, the remaining party guests scattered like rats from a sinking ship. Nobody wanted to be associated with the scandal that was already exploding across social media. Within minutes, our penthouse went from packed celebration to empty crime scene, with only my small team of allies remaining. I stood in the center of the living room, surrounded by abandoned champagne glasses and wilted flower arrangements, trying to process what had just happened. The live stream was still running, comments flooding in by the thousands. Diana's camera crew was packing up their equipment, already editing the footage for the morning news cycle. Marcus appeared at my side with a bottle of water. "How are you holding up? I just destroyed my husband's life on camera in front of 500,000 people. I'm not entirely sure how I'm supposed to feel." "Victorious," Elena suggested, joining us with her laptop. "Because that's what you should feel. Look at this." She turned the screen to show me the trending topics. Hashtag Sophia Chen was #1 worldwide. Hashtag Alexander Sinclair was #2. The video of his arrest had already been viewed 8 million times. "The story is everywhere," Diana said, looking up from her phone. "Every major news outlet is covering it. Business networks, entertainment sites, even international press. This is going to be the biggest financial scandal of the decade." James was on his phone with his lawyers, already preparing his lawsuit against Alexander. "They're estimating I can recover the full 50 million plus damages. And that's just the beginning. Every investor Alexander has defrauded over the years is going to come out of the woodwork now." Catherine Walsh was reviewing documents on her tablet. "The divorce papers are filed. Alexander will be served at the federal holding facility within the hour. And Sophia, based on my preliminary review of the evidence, you have claim to approximately 65% of the marital assets." 65%? I thought it would be 50-50 at most. "Under normal circumstances, yes. But given that Alexander committed identity theft using your name, used your signature without permission on legal documents, and deliberately implicated you in criminal activities, the court will likely award punitive damages. Plus, those shell companies with your name, you have legitimate legal claim to the assets within them. We're looking at roughly $890 million. The number was so large it didn't feel real. Yesterday morning, I was the pity wife living in a gilded cage. Now I was about to become one of the wealthiest women in New York. What about criminal charges for me?" I asked, the fear I'd been suppressing suddenly surfacing. "My name is on those documents. My signature. Forged without your knowledge or consent," Marcus interrupted. "I've already been in contact with the prosecutors. They're not interested in charging you. You're a victim in this case, not a co-conspirator. The evidence makes that clear." My phone started ringing. Unknown numbers over and over. I silenced it and looked at Marcus. "The media? Probably. You're going to want to make a statement at some point, but not tonight. Tonight you should rest." But I couldn't rest. I was too wired, too overwhelmed. Instead, I walked through the penthouse, looking at my life through new eyes. The expensive furniture I'd never chosen. The art I didn't understand. The carefully curated space that had never felt like a home. Victoria appeared in the doorway, mascara running down her face. "Can we talk?" Everyone tensed, but I nodded. "Give us a minute?" My team reluctantly moved to the terrace, leaving Victoria and me alone in the wreckage of the party. "I didn't know," she said immediately, "about the marriage being fake, about the fraud, about any of it. He told me you knew about us, that you were staying for the money, that you didn't love him anymore. And you believed him?" I wanted to believe him. He was charming and attentive and made me feel special. I was an idiot. I studied her carefully. The woman I'd seen as my rival, my enemy. She looked small and broken. Nothing like the confident socialite who'd arrived hours earlier. "How long?" I asked. 2 years. We met at a charity auction. He pursued me aggressively. I thought, God, I'm so stupid. I thought he was going to leave you for me. He was using both of us, Victoria. You're as much a victim as I am. She looked up at me, surprised. You don't hate me? I hate what happened. I hate the situation. But you didn't know the truth any more than I did. Alexander is the villain here, not you. Victoria wiped her eyes. The things he said about you in that recording. The way he talked about the marriage. I feel sick thinking about the things I believed about you. He's very good at manipulation. I'm going to testify, she said suddenly, against him. Whatever the prosecutors need, I'll tell them everything. After Victoria left, I found myself alone in the master bedroom, staring at my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was still wearing the red dress, still had perfect makeup, still looked like she was ready for a party. But her eyes were different, harder, stronger. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I opened it. It was from Alexander. You think you've won? You've destroyed both our lives. When I get out of this, and you'll have nothing. The prenup is ironclad. My lawyers will eviscerate you. You'll end up exactly where you started. Nobody. Nothing. Alone. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I took a screenshot and forwarded it to Catherine Walsh with a note. Evidence of continued harassment. Please handle accordingly. Her response came seconds later. Documented. This will help our case immensely. Stop responding to him. Let him dig himself deeper. I blocked Alexander's number and walked back out to the terrace where my team was waiting. The Manhattan skyline glittered before us. Millions of lights representing millions of lives that were all going on normally while mine had just imploded and reformed in the span of a few hours. What happens now? I asked. Marcus handed me a glass of champagne. Now, we watch Alexander's empire burn. The SEC raid on his office starts in 6 hours. The company's board is holding an emergency meeting to vote on removing him. Every business relationship he has is being severed. And the best part? It's all documented. Every second of his downfall. Elena pulled up a news feed on her phone. The stock price has already dropped 87%. Trading was halted an hour ago. The company is finished. Good, James said with satisfaction. He built that company on lies and stolen money. It deserves to fail. Diana was editing her article on her laptop. My piece goes live in the Times tomorrow morning. I have quotes from 5 different victims of Alexander's schemes. This is going to destroy what's left of his reputation. I looked at these people who had become my unlikely allies in the span of just a few days. I don't know how to thank you all. Thank us by living well, Marcus said. By taking everything he tried to destroy and building something better. That's the best revenge. As the night wore on and my team gradually left, I found myself alone in the penthouse for the first time. It was strange, being in this space that had been my prison for 3 years but suddenly felt different. Empty but also full of possibility. I walked through each room, mentally cataloging what I would keep and what I would burn. The furniture could go. The art could be sold. The carefully curated life could be dismantled piece by piece. In the morning, I would start rebuilding. But tonight, I would sleep in my own bed, in my own space, for the first time in 3 years, with no lies between me and the truth. As I was getting ready for bed, my phone buzzed one last time. It was a message from Marcus. Alexander's first court appearance is tomorrow at 2 p.m. Do you want to be there? I thought about it for a long moment. Part of me wanted to see him standing before a judge, wanted to watch him be held accountable. But another part of me knew that my presence wasn't necessary. The evidence spoke for itself. The consequences were already in motion. I typed back, "No, I'm done looking back. Only forward now." His response was immediate. "That's my sister. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start building your new life." I fell asleep that night in the red dress I'd worn to destroy my husband's perfect image, and I dreamed of everything I would become. 6 months later, I stood in my new office overlooking the Hudson River, reviewing the quarterly reports for Chen Ventures, my new investment firm focused on women-led startups. The view from here was just as spectacular as the one from Alexander's penthouse, but it felt different. The space was mine, built with my money, decorated to my taste, filled with people I chose to work with. Elena sat across from me as my chief operating officer, reviewing partnership proposals. Marcus was down the hall in his role as CFO, making sure every dollar was accounted for with the thoroughness that had brought down Alexander. And tomorrow, we were interviewing candidates for 3 new positions on our team. The Peterson proposal looks solid, Elena said, sliding a folder across my desk. 3 women from MIT with a revolutionary approach to renewable energy. They need $2 million in seed funding. Set up a meeting. I want to hear their pitch in person. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Alexander's sentencing hearing was today. I'd known it was coming but had deliberately avoided following the trial too closely. Catherine had kept me updated on the important parts, but I didn't need to watch every minute of his downfall. The alert now showed the results. 15 years in federal prison, $50 million in restitution to defrauded investors, and all assets seized. The judge had been particularly harsh in her sentencing remarks, calling Alexander's crimes a betrayal of everyone who trusted him, most especially his wife, whose identity he stole to facilitate his criminal enterprise. I closed the alert without reading further. Alexander's consequences were his to bear. I had my own life to live. The divorce had been finalized 2 months ago. The settlement was even larger than Catherine had initially projected. $890 million in cash and assets, plus the penthouse which I immediately sold for another $200 million. I'd taken that money and done exactly what Marcus suggested. Built something better. Chen Ventures had launched with $500 million in capital, focused exclusively on investing in women entrepreneurs who had been overlooked by traditional venture capital. In 6 months, we'd funded 43 companies, created over 600 jobs, and our portfolio was already showing returns that made the business press take notice. But the money was just part of it. I'd also established the Sophia Chen Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to helping women escape financially abusive relationships. We provided legal assistance, financial counseling, temporary housing, and job training. Elena co-chaired it with me, using her own experience with Alexander to help others recognize the signs of manipulation and control. My phone rang. It was Victoria. "Hi, Sophia. Are you watching the news? I saw the sentencing results. 15 years. He'll probably serve 10 with good behavior. But still, justice served, right?" Victoria and I had developed an unlikely friendship over the past 6 months. She'd been true to her word, testifying against Alexander and providing crucial evidence for the prosecution. Her testimony about the affair, the lies, the manipulation had been devastating. After the trial, she donated her $5 million settlement from Alexander to my foundation. "How are you doing?" I asked. "Good, actually. The gallery opening is next week. You're still coming, right? Wouldn't miss it." Victoria had used the scandal as a catalyst to completely rebuild her life. She'd left the shallow socialite scene behind and opened an art gallery in Chelsea, showcasing emerging artists who'd been overlooked by the traditional art world. It was successful, respected, and entirely her own creation. "Sophia, I wanted to say thank you, again, for not hating me, for giving me a chance to make things right. We both got caught in Alexander's web, Victoria. The difference is we got out." After we hung up, I turned back to Elena. "Where were we?" "The Peterson proposal. Also, you have an interview with Forbes tomorrow about being named to their top 100 self-made women list." I smiled. Self-made. That was accurate now. Everything I had, I'd built myself from the ashes of Alexander's betrayal. The intercom buzzed. "Ms. Chen, there's someone here to see you. No appointment, but he says it's important. A Michael Cortez." I didn't recognize the name, but something made me curious. "Send him in." The man who entered my office was in his early 40s, well-dressed, with kind eyes and a nervous energy. "Ms. Chen, thank you for seeing me. I know you don't know me, but I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Michael Cortez. I run a nonprofit that provides coding education to underprivileged kids in the Bronx." "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Cortez. How can I help you?" "Actually, I'm here because I wanted to help you. Or rather, I wanted to thank you." He pulled out a folder. 5 years ago, I applied for funding from the Sinclair Foundation. Alexander interviewed me personally, seemed very interested in the program. Then he turned me down, said it wasn't a good fit for their portfolio. "I'm sorry to hear that. Don't be. Because after your exposé, after seeing what kind of man he really was, I realized that rejection was a gift. But more than that, watching you take control of your life, watching you build something positive from something so terrible, it inspired me. I went back to our application, updated it, and started applying to other foundations. We got funded by the Gates Foundation last month. $3 million over 5 years. I felt tears prick my eyes. That's wonderful. It wouldn't have happened without you. Your courage, your refusal to be a victim. It reminded me that rejection isn't the end. It's just a redirect. He handed me the folder. I brought you our updated business plan. Not to ask for funding, just to show you what you inspired. Thank you, Ms. Chen. After he left, I sat at my desk holding the folder and let myself feel the full weight of the past 6 months. The exposure of Alexander's crimes had done more than destroy his life. It had created ripples of change. Women in similar situations had found the courage to leave. Business partners he'd defrauded had gotten justice. People who'd been rejected or dismissed by him had found new paths forward. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Marcus. Dinner tonight? I want to hear about the Forbes interview prep. I smiled. Marcus and I were closer now than we'd ever been. He'd moved to New York to work with me, and we had dinner together at least twice a week. Family, real family, built on truth instead of lies. As I was packing up for the day, Catherine called with one final update. Alexander's lawyers filed an appeal on the sentence. It was denied. This is over, Sophia. Truly over. And the harassment charges? Those stuck too. He's not allowed to contact you in any form. If he tries, it extends his sentence. Good. One more thing. I got a call from a woman named Jennifer Hartwell. She was married to Alexander before you. Apparently, he put her through a similar situation 8 years ago. Married her for appearances. Divorced her when she was no longer useful. She wants to meet you. Did she get a fair settlement? No. She signed a prenup and walked away with almost nothing. But after seeing your case, she's interested in reopening the proceedings. Fraud can void a prenup even years later. Give her my number. I'd like to help if I can. That evening, I had dinner with James Rodriguez at a quiet Italian restaurant in the West Village. Over the past 6 months, James and I had developed a friendship built on mutual respect and shared experience. He'd recovered his $50 million from Alexander's seized assets and had started his own venture capital firm, partnering with mine on several deals. So, Forbes Top 100, he said, raising his wine glass. From pity wife to powerhouse in 6 months. That's got to be some kind of record. I prefer to think of it as finally becoming who I was always meant to be. Alexander just delayed the process by 3 years. Speaking of Alexander, I heard he's trying to write a book from prison. His side of the story or some nonsense. Let him. Nobody's going to publish the sob story of a convicted fraudster who stole from his wife. James smiled. You know what I admire most about how you handled all of this? What? You didn't just destroy him. You built something better. A lot of people would have taken the money and disappeared. You took it and created jobs, funded businesses, helped other people. That takes real character. I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago. Heartbroken, betrayed, drowning in self-doubt. I think Alexander did me a favor in a twisted way. He showed me exactly who not to be. Every decision I make now, I ask myself, is this authentic to who I am, or am I doing it for someone else's approval? It's liberating. Are you dating anyone? James asked carefully. Not that it's my business, but you deserve happiness. I'm dating myself right now, learning who Sophia Chen is when she's not trying to be Mrs. Alexander Sinclair. Maybe someday I'll be ready for a relationship, but right now, I'm enjoying building my life on my own terms. James nodded, but there was something in his expression that made me wonder if the question had been more than casual curiosity. As I walked home that night through the streets of Manhattan, I thought about how different everything felt. 6 months ago, I'd walked these same streets feeling trapped, invisible, like a ghost haunting someone else's life. Now I walked with my head high, knowing that every step I took was in a direction I chose. My new apartment was in Tribeca, a beautiful loft space that I decorated entirely by myself. No designer, no approval needed from anyone else. It was filled with color and art and books, spaces to create and think and just be. It was home in a way the penthouse never had been. I poured myself a glass of wine and stood by the window, looking out at the city. Somewhere out there, Alexander was sitting in a prison cell, probably still unable to comprehend how thoroughly his world had collapsed. Part of me wondered if he'd learned anything, if he understood the consequences of treating people as tools for his own advancement. But mostly, I didn't think about him at all anymore. He'd taken up enough space in my life. The future was mine to write, and I was filling it with things that mattered. Purpose, authenticity, connection, growth. My phone rang. An unknown number, but I answered it anyway. Ms. Chen? This is Jennifer Hartwell. Your lawyer gave me your number. I hope it's okay that I'm calling. Of course. Catherine mentioned you might reach out. I just wanted to say thank you for what you did, for exposing him. I spent 8 years thinking there was something wrong with me, that I wasn't good enough, that I deserved the way he treated me. Seeing you stand up to him, seeing you refuse to be a victim, it helped me realize that none of it was my fault. It wasn't your fault, Jennifer, and it wasn't mine either. Alexander is a predator. That's on him, not us. I'm reopening my divorce settlement. Catherine thinks we can make a case for fraud, given the evidence from your case. Good. You deserve justice too. We talked for almost an hour. Jennifer told me her story, the similarities to mine both heartbreaking and infuriating. Alexander had a pattern, a system for selecting and manipulating women. But that pattern was broken now, exposed for what it was. After we hung up, I realized something important. My revenge on Alexander wasn't just about that one night at the anniversary party. It wasn't just about the arrest or the trial or the sentencing. It was bigger than that. It was about every woman he'd hurt finding her voice. Every person he'd defrauded getting justice. Every life he'd damaged being rebuilt. That was the real victory. 3 weeks later, I sat in a television studio preparing for my first major interview. The host, a respected journalist named Sophia Chen, no relation, had built her career on thoughtful, in-depth conversations with newsmakers. She'd been trying to book me for months, and I'd finally agreed. "We're live in 2 minutes," the producer said, touching up my makeup one last time. Sarah settled into the chair across from me. "Thank you for doing this. I know you've been selective about interviews. I wanted to wait until I had something worth saying beyond just the scandal. And now you do?" "Now I do." The cameras started rolling. Sarah opened with the basic facts of the story, the overheard conversation, the investigation, the anniversary party expose, but then she pivoted to what I'd built since. "Sophia, in 6 months, you've gone from being known as the wife of a disgraced billionaire to being a successful entrepreneur and philanthropist in your own right. How did you make that transformation?" "I think I was always this person. I just forgot for a while." Alexander's betrayal was devastating, but it also freed me from trying to be someone I wasn't. Once I stopped trying to fit into his vision of who I should be, I could finally become who I actually am. What would you say to other women who might be in similar situations? Who might be questioning their relationships or their worth? I looked directly into the camera. Trust yourself. If something feels wrong, it probably is. If you're making yourself smaller to fit into someone else's life, you're with the wrong person. And if you find yourself in a situation where you've been betrayed or manipulated, remember that their actions say everything about them and nothing about you. You are worthy of honesty, respect, and authentic love. Never settle for less. Your foundation focuses on helping women escape financially abusive relationships. Why was that your priority? Because financial abuse is one of the most insidious forms of control. Alexander used money to keep me dependent, to make me feel like I couldn't survive without him. The foundation helps women regain their financial independence, which is often the first step to regaining everything else. We talked for 45 minutes. About the business, the foundation, the lessons I'd learned. About forgiveness, not for Alexander, but for myself. About the importance of surrounding yourself with people who see your worth. about building a life that's authentic instead of performative. As the interview wrapped up, Sarah asked one final question. Do you have any regrets? I thought about it carefully. I regret the time I lost. The 3 years I spent living someone else's idea of what my life should be. But I don't regret what happened, because it taught me who I am when everything else is stripped away. And I don't regret exposing Alexander, because it needed to be done. Not just for me, but for everyone he hurt and everyone he would have hurt in the future. Last question. Have you heard from Alexander at all? No, and I hope I never do. That chapter of my life is closed. I'm writing new chapters now, and they're all mine. The interview aired that evening to record viewership. By morning, I had 300 new funding applications for the foundation, 50 partnership inquiries for the business, and thousands of messages from women thanking me for sharing my story. Standing in my office the next day, looking out at the river and the city beyond, I thought about the journey from that devastating overheard conversation to this moment. The path had been painful, terrifying, infuriating, but it had also been necessary. Alexander had been right about one thing in the cruelest possible way. Nobody else had wanted me, but not because I wasn't worthy of being wanted. Because I hadn't wanted myself. I'd been so desperate for someone to choose me that I'd forgotten to choose myself. I would never make that mistake again. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Family dinner tonight? I'm cooking. I smiled and typed back. I'll bring the wine. Family. Not the one built on lies and appearances and strategic business decisions, but the one built on truth and support and genuine love. The family I chose who chose me back. That evening, surrounded by the people who mattered, Marcus, Elena, Victoria, James, and a dozen others who had become my chosen family, I raised a toast. To new beginnings, to building lives that are true instead of perfect, and to the courage to walk away from anything that makes us small. To Sophia, Marcus added, who showed us all what real strength looks like. We drank, we laughed, we told stories. And for the first time in 3 years, I felt completely, authentically happy. Alexander Sinclair had married me out of pity, thinking nobody else would want me. But he'd been wrong. I didn't need anyone else to want me. I just needed to want myself. Everything else followed from there. And that was the real ending to the story. Not the revenge, not the money, not the public destruction of a man who deserved it, but the quiet victory of becoming the person I was always meant to be, with or without someone else's approval. Nobody else wanted me? Good, because I wanted myself, and that was enough.